And I'm thrilled to be on your show tonight to talk about what I think is such important information for people to hear and to understand. So I want to stress before we start talking that some of the information is going to be difficult for people to hear because we are dealing in the realms of deep shadow areas of our lives that have not really been brought to consciousness yet. And so once we understand what's happened to us during our own conception and while we were in the womb and during the birth process, which has been totally corrupted, and how this influences us, we can begin the healing process and actually, we'll be much more likely to be able to create authentic human love. So I think we have a lot of really wounded relationships on the planet right now that people are having trouble accessing human love.
And this tiny little baby in this photo, it makes me want to cry.
It should make us cry when we realize the numbers of babies that are being murdered every day in the United States alone.
How old is this baby in the photo?
I would venture to say it's probably a 4-month-old baby. And, we know there's a big trial that's been going on the last month about babies being aborted later than 20 weeks and being born alive and having their spines cut.
Yes.
Just
severed and murdered.
Being put in toilet bowls and drowned and trying to swim to save their own lives. And what's going on with abortion is, I have to stress this, okay? We are talking about human sacrifice. We are talking about a satanic-based ritual of human sacrifice where women are offering up their children to the forces of darkness. And I know people don't want to think about this, but we're murdering our children in exchange for a few minutes of fleeting physical gratification. And we have been conditioned to think that this is normal and to think that this is okay. But I can assure you that I have seen images of babies that are aborted in the early stages of life that have been pulled out of the womb. You see a little arm pulled off, the head's pulled off, the feet are pulled off. They're being pulled out limb from limb. In later stage abortions, they're actually being burned to death in the womb. There's a saline solution that's injected into the amniotic sac, and the baby gulps in the fluid, and its little lungs are burnt from the inside, and the outer layer of its skin is burnt, and the baby is born burnt. If it's, born dead, sometimes it's not actually dead when it is born, but our babies are being burnt to death in the womb. And then what's happening if they come out alive, which is not all that uncommon, is they're being murdered in some of the most grotesque and horrid ways. And we know now, Roxy, that aborted human babies are ending up in vaccines. We know that they're ending up in stamina-boosting pills. We know that they're ending up in companies like Sonomics that is doing what's called flavor-enhancing research for companies like Coca-Cola and Lipton Tea. So the products that are being developed through Sonomics are being developed off of the backs of the children that we have chosen to murder, and that we've done so because we wanted to have a few minutes of physical gratification. So when we look at what is being taught to our young people, and I really want to stress the spiritual dynamics of all of this are quite dark. But when you are in a high school classroom and Planned Parenthood is handing out condoms with one hand, encouraging young people to engage in sex just for the sake of it, you don't have to love the person, just put the condom on, it's okay, as long as you got the condom on. Well, here's the condoms, and with the other hand, they're raking in millions, murdering babies every year. We have a real issue. The Planned Parenthood is Rockefeller funded.
Yes, it is. And what about the morning after pill? They're passing it for 15-year-olds now.
And they want to pass it for younger children. Okay, so we know, that boys the average age for a boy to begin watching pornography is 11 years old. We know that the programming around sexuality is to separate from love. And I want to stress that with the condoms, okay, what we're saying to a young boy is, here, put this barrier on between you and your partner, this toxic piece of rubber or plastic that's got poison all over it that are going to kill your sperm and are going to infect the vagina of the woman that you put it into. Okay, so, and create that barrier between you and your partner. And, you know, you're going to release this very sacred and potent life-creating potential that the Creator provided for us to bring forth life in a conscious way. We're going to have you just spew it out into this toxic piece of rubber and flush it down the trash or flush it down the toilet. Okay, because your life creating, the last thing we want you to do is to use your life creating potential in the service of creating life, because we are a culture of death. We are a satanic infested culture.
What's wrong with rape? I'm asking you to fill it out for me. What's wrong with rape?
That it violates a person's rights.
It violates another person's...
It's a sexual assault. It violates a person's rights. It's illegal. There's a plethora of...
Okay, exactly. I'm in agreement with you, by the way, of course, but I think what we would say is wrong with rape, the violation of another person's being, doing things to their body that you ought not to do, we would both agree with that. That's the very thing happening in abortion.
You're going to draw it back to that, but again...
But it's true. What's your argument against it?
My argument against it is the fetus is not an autonomous
Why are you speaking Latin? Fetus comes from the Latin meaning small child or baby. Why don't you just use English? Fetus means baby in Latin.
Our whole language is based on Latin,
right,
and many other forms. So you would have to ask me to stop using all forms.
Why don't we use the English word and say small child or baby rather than using fetus, which is a Latin word that means small child or baby?
Because fetus is a medical term that is widely accepted as English.
And it means baby. So when you say a woman should be able to kill her fetus, we could also say a woman should be able to kill her baby.
Okay, so if you would like me to alter my phrasing to what I truly think it is fine. It's a clump of cells.
You realize, of course, that not only is that inconsistent with what God says it is, but it is also inconsistent with biological science. That argument was used 40 years ago, and it's a dead argument now. You realize as a Planned Parenthood supporter that the people who are at the top echelon of this field and argument don't use the clump of cells argument anymore because it is against biological discovery and science. The only difference biologically from the moment of conception to where you're at today, this is just a fact of science, is its size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependence. Yeah. So when do we kill people because of their size? When do we kill them because of their level of development? Like you're not, my 7-year-old is here today, he's not fully developed. Can I kill him?
Because abortions are never committed prior to the 6th week of pregnancy, every child abortion kills is already so fully formed that her heart's beating and her brain's producing brainwave activity. Many of the babies you'll see, however, range in age through the 2nd and 3rd trimesters of pregnancy. Most were taken from garbage bags, removed from a dumpster behind an abortion clinic in Houston, Texas. They've been included to emphasize the sickening fact that the vast majority of all abortions are committed simply as a means of birth control. We also want you to understand that convenience abortion is legal throughout all 9 months of pregnancy.
Because he's not fully developed? Our environment, it's inside the woman. We're going to go in and out of different environments all of our lives. When do we give somebody the right to kill someone because of where they're located? And the degree of dependence, you and I are both going to be dependent upon people at some time in our lives. You were dependent upon your mom. I was dependent upon mine. Do you have kids?
No.
Okay. I have 4. And all my kids are dependent upon me. And sometimes it's like, it hurts because they cost a lot of money, but they're dependent upon me. I can't kill them because they're dependent upon me. And you and I probably at some point will probably be 80 years old if God gives us that much, and we're going to be dependent upon somebody. And do we say, well, I can kill them now because they're dependent? Biologically speaking, it's a fact, and you can look this up. You don't have to take my word for it. It's a fact that at the moment of conception, you have the full profile of you. The only difference is your size, level of development, the environment, and degree of dependence.
I'm here standing out for secular ability to choose.
Right. So, but here's the point. So what? You need the ability to choose. Says who? Says you?
Says everyone. We allow everyone freedom of choice, personal freedom. That's
why
what
is that
our
important
rights as Americans
why is
are based
why is that
on.
important in your worldview?
That everyone have the right to choose. The same that
choose to murder their children. Why is that important in your worldview?
that everyone have the right to choose whatever they choose.
Okay, so
whether it's medical care, whether it's religion, whether it's secular, whether it's atheism.
Your position is that people should have the right to choose to do whatever they want.
That confines within the law.
Okay, which law? Germany's law with the SS, or American law when they allowed slavery, or is it today's law? Which society and which time period are we going to choose from to say that law is inspired, or does it change?
It does change.
Okay, so
law changes based on the will of the people.
Gotcha. So if the will of the people say it's perfectly okay to enslave black people, that's morally good in your worldview, isn't it?
Moral is a word that you continue to use that I never apply.
So you don't have. Do you believe in objective morality? Do you believe that there's objective truth and an objective basis for morality?
Yes.
Okay, there is. So, but you said a moment ago that society determines what is law.
It does.
Okay, so how is that objective? Because societies change over time and their laws change over time. How is that objective?
What I am trying to get to is that the problem is that, yes, laws do change over time.
They called me up one day and asked me if I would work at the Women's Medical Center. And I told him I would, because I didn't have a problem with abortion, or at least I didn't think I did. And grabbing his little feet with his hands, he pulled the baby out of the mother breech position until he had the entire body, everything delivered except for the head. And as I stood there, this little baby was kicking his feet and moving his little hands and fingers, and very much alive. And the doctor's very careful to make sure that he holds the baby's head in with his 2 fingers, with his left hand, to make sure that that head doesn't slip out. Because if the head slips out now, 3 inches, 3 seconds from being born, and he kills it, it's murder. But as long as he leaves that head in there, and he's very careful to make sure that head stays there, it doesn't matter how he kills it. It's an abortion and it's legal in this country. And as I stood there in horror, I watched this. The doctor took a pair of scissors and into the back of the baby's neck, back here, he plunged those scissors. And when he did this, the baby jerked out in a startle reaction. And he took the scissors and he opened it up to make a hole in the back of the neck. And he took a high-powered suction machine and a catheter, and he stuck that into the hole, and he literally suctioned out the baby's brains. And they went down the tube and into a jar.
When he did an abortion, especially a over 20-week abortion, most of the time the fetus would come completely out before he either cut the spinal cord or he introduced one of the instruments into the soft spot of the fetus in order to kill the fetus.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to highlight the government's backdoor funding of abortions through grants to abortion provider Planned Parenthood. 45% of the organization's entire revenue, totaling roughly $540 million in 2013, was provided directly by the American taxpayer through government grants. Planned Parenthood performed 327,000 abortions in 2012.
Big money is being made from the sale of fetal body parts.
We're looking at all of the vaccinations. Many are created with aborted fetal cells. Yeah, I'd like to hear from the one last witness, and then I'm finished. Thank you.
And what is the question to the one last witness?
About the vaccinations, how they're derived.
Okay. The fetal aspect.
Yes. So I checked the MMR insert last night from Merck. They do mention that there are in the contents and how it is made in the very beginning part, and I can get that for you if you like, that the MMR still says that on their insert that they do use descendants from the line, the cell line, that are still human fetal lung fibroblasts. So from the initial aborted fetuses that used historically, they are still using the cell lines that have been propagated and grown still in the laboratory to create the MMR.
On the table as a result of a botched abortion, what would Planned Parenthood want to have happen to that child that's struggling for life? You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, we believe that any decision that's made should be left up to the woman.
So the mother can kill the baby. So distinguished.
What happens in a situation where a baby is alive, breathing on a table, moving? What do your physicians do at that point?
Listen.
I do not have that information.
She don't have that information.
Physician, I'm not an abortion provider, so I do not have that.
Why are you there then? Let the baby die. Can you believe this?
On August 4th, 1992, 2 employees of Aware Woman Center for Choice registered a non-profit religious corporation known as the Wiccan Religious Cooperative of Florida. The stated purpose of the WRCF is to provide an umbrella organization for witch covens throughout the state. The incorporation papers list 2 abortion clinic employees, Veronica Jordan and Rebecca Morris, as directors of the Wiccan organization. Shortly after the Wiccan Religious Cooperative of Florida was founded, Carol Ebbing, another Aware Woman employee, ordered this book entitled The Sacrament of Abortion. The January 1993 issue of Wiccan Open Circle newsletter described the founding of the Wiccan Religious Cooperative of Florida. A year ago, the dream of an umbrella group under which many covens would function and be committed to peace and harmony for the good of all was just that, a dream. But now it is a reality and a very, very big part of the lives of many people. The same newsletter published at the time a pro-life organization held an event in Melbourne, Florida, alerted Central Florida area Wiccans and pagans. Steps are being taken to protect not only a were woman, but a woman's right to choose. Work is being done mundanely, financially, and magically to help get through the next few months and beyond. Readers of Open Circle were encouraged to become clinic escorts and were told how they could help fund the South Brevard National Organization of Women's program to help low-income women have abortions.
And what are the babies for? What do you get the babies?
We send the social services to do it, unfortunately. They get the babies from families who can't look after the baby.
Wiccans were also encouraged to work their magic on the area surrounding the Aware Woman abortion clinic. Many individuals and groups have been helping to magically protect the building and property. This has been done by magical and psychic shielding being put on and around the property. Is this just one abortion clinic that happens to have ties to a witch's coven? Or is it indicative of something deeper within the abortion rights movement? In focusing on the subject of abortion, much has been contended from a medical and social perspective. But when we pull the lid off and look at abortion from a biblical and spiritual perspective, the implications are far more profound and staggering. As we view the ties between occult religion and the abortion industry, the conclusion will become obvious. The promotion of abortion is not just a political and social issue, it is part of a religious and spiritual agenda. The religion of witchcraft and child sacrifice.
So you reach the age of 12, and then you're told by your parents you're going to an induction ceremony in the Vatican. Can you tell us how that happened and what occurred at that ceremony when you went there?
Okay. This isn't easy to talk about, as you know. When I was 12, I was flown over to Germany, and I was at, I'll call them the German Father's house over there. And there was some preparation for a few days beforehand, and I was told that there would be a very important ceremony, and it was considered a sealing ceremony at that point. And basically, I was told a little bit about what I was expected to do during the ceremony. You know, when we got there, we went to the Vatican. There's underneath the Vatican, there's a large room that I described to you when we talked before. It has 13 catacomb chambers leading into it and what they do is they, as you go down these steps into the room, you can see that it's almost circular, and so they're all around it, and they bring out the mummies from the catacombs, and they set them beside each one, and they say that the spirits of the fathers watching over the ceremony. And during the ceremony, there was a large table in the center of the room. It was on top of a huge golden pentagram. And they had a ceremony there. You know, they
Okay, now how many other children were with you being inducted into the family or the order, as they call it?
There were 2 other children at that point, and there were several adults too. Well, there was a table. It looked like dark glass in the center of the room. I mean, it was made of stone, but it was very shiny and dark and black. And it may have been something like obsidian or onyx. I'm not sure. You know, I'd have to. That's the only time I've seen stone like that. And it had like around the corners, they had like these gold, I guess, channels that you know, to collect fluids. And little boy was placed in the center of the table and drugged. I think he was drugged because he was very quiet. He didn't move or say anything during the ceremony.
This was a little 3 or 4-year-old boy.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they continued to go ahead. They continued to do a child sacrifice.
Yes,
right in front of you.
They did. Yes. Yeah, I told you about that before. Yeah. The man was in scarlet. He was speaking in Latin, and basically he was saying, you know, please accept the sacrifice, you know, on this day. But then, you know, and then he said the sacrifice will seal the ceremony, and then he did it. Again, I was so terrified that. Have there ever been a situation where your heart's racing, but you can't do anything, and so you're just kind of sitting there and you're kind of like fading in and out? That's kind of.
I can remember as a youth being frightened, but I don't think I've ever.
No. All right. Well,
gone through anything quite like what you.
Yeah, imagine your heart rate going up to about 220. You can't move, so you're kind of shaking, but trying like not to show it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was horrible. And I was keep thinking inside, I can't wait it's over. I can't wait. I mean, you don't say this, but inside you're just kind of saying over and over, I can't wait till it's over. I can't wait till it's over. I can't wait till it's over. Afterwards, the man in scarlet, he had a huge golden ring on his hand, and he came over to the center of the room, and he had each of the people that were swearing that day. I had to go forward and kneel before him and kiss his ring and swear my allegiance to the new order, to the new world order, until my death.
In mid-October of 1964, kissing cousins Elizabeth and Philip paid a royal visit to a Catholic residential school for Aboriginal children in Kamloops, British Columbia, Canada. William Coombs was 12 years old at the time of the royal visit. I was an inmate at the Kamloops school when we were visited, said Coombs. I remember it was strange because they came by themselves, no big fanfare or nothing. But I recognized them, and the school principal told us it was the Queen, and we all got given new clothes and good food for the first time in months the day before she arrived. The day the Queen got to the school, I was part of a group of kids that went on a picnic with her and her husband and some of the priests. We went down to a meadow near Dead Man's Creek. I remember it was weird because we all had to bend down and kiss her foot, and she was wearing a white lace boot. After a while, I saw the Queen and her husband leave the picnic with 10 children from the school, and those kids never returned. They took away those 10 kids and nobody ever saw them again. We never heard anything more about them, and we never met them again even when we were older. They were all from around there, but they all vanished. The group that disappeared was 7 boys and 3 girls in age from 6 to 14 years old. They were all from the smart group in the class. 2 of the boys were brothers, and they were Mady from Quesnel. Their last name was Arnoux, or Arnold. I don't remember the others, just an occasional first name like Cecilia, and there was an Edward. What happened was also witnessed by my friend, George Adolph, who was 11 years old at the time and a student there too. But he's dead now. William Coombs, the sole survivor, was scheduled to appear as the star witness at the International Tribunal into Crimes of Church and State in London, England. But William Coombs never made it to the tribunal. He died of unknown causes shortly before he was scheduled to testify. Reverend Kevin Annett, a former minister of the United Church of Canada, believes that William Coombs was murdered to stop him from speaking out about the royal abductions and other crimes of murder and torture.
Do not, please, if you want to know what's going on, do not judge what these people would do by what you would do, because they're not like you.
Right.
You say they'd never do that. No, you would never do that. They do, and they do it all the time. So because they have this lack of empathy, in any way, shape, or form, they can orchestrate the world to cause mayhem. They want to cause mayhem. That's the aim. They want to cause suffering. They want to cause suffering in the child and the children that they abuse and sacrifice and torture because they get a kick out of it. They want mayhem in the world in general by manipulating the banking and economic system and wars and suffering of various kinds. They want that because they get a collective kick out of that. They want the mayhem. It's not a mistake. Oh, look what they've done now. How silly. Look what's happened now. They wanted it to happen. And by understanding the mentality that we're dealing with, sheer, bloody, unadulterated evil, which appropriately is life, written backwards, that's what we're dealing with. That's why we have the world that we have today. And that's why we've got to grow up, wake up, get the bum off the sofa, get the I'm just little me, what can I do, out of your bloody mind, and let's start sorting this.
All for a satanic cult.
Why do they want to kill people?
It's supposed to be for the reincarnation of the devil.
Glenn Hobbs was initiated into a satanic coven as a child by his grandfather and continued participating for many years. I recently asked Glenn about his involvement and the importance of Halloween to the occultist.
Well, my involvement in satanic worship was, I was involved in it as a child. Of course, I was a generational Satanist, what they call a generational Satanist, and what that means is that my family was involved in it and their family before them. Now, my earliest rememberings of Halloween and some of the things that were involved was, it was a very dark time for me as a child. It was something that I didn't enjoy.
Glenn, could you tell us about your involvement in any rituals at Halloween as a child?
There was another little girl that was involved in the occult with me, and her name was Becky. Now, Becky was a different type of child. She was blessed to be a sacrifice. I was being blessed to be a high priest, where she was being blessed and born into the coven there to be a sacrifice. Now, we were in a ritual where we were married together. It was a marriage to the beast, and me and the little girl were married together, and there was a lot of sexual abuse that took place and a lot of blood that was spilt over us, joining us together.
When do Halloween rituals actually begin, and what is the ultimate purpose of Halloween?
Well, the ritual that I remember the most clearly began about the end of September. Me and the little girl, the one I mentioned named Becky, the abuse was very concentrated at that time. We were taken into several rooms where our clothing was removed. We spent the next couple of weeks in a kind of a shack where a lot of rituals went on, where a lot of animals were killed. They summoned Lucifer and his spirit to come and possess me, and so that I would be blessed to take over the position of the high priest at a certain point in time. Now, Halloween night, they had again put me and the little girl in the back of this van, and we again drove off, which seemed like for a long time. We were drugged once again, and we finally came to this stop. They took the little girl out and they left me in the van. I could hear a lot of commotion that was going on outside. People that were screaming and yelling, and this low murmuring and moaning noise that was going on, like some kind of a low chanting noise that was going on. So I knew in my mind there was some type of a ritual going on, because I'd heard that many times before. You know, it was real common to see people fall on the ground and convulse and go into convulsions during rituals and stuff with the demonic presence that were around. And finally, a woman came to the back of the van and she said, "It's time to go." And she brought me out of the van, and I could see that there was just a lot of people around. Some were dressed in dark brownish kind of robes with hoods over them. They took me up and they led me up to this stone altar. And I remember I saw the little girl, and she was on the altar. Now at first, you know, I just wondered what was going on, because you never knew. I mean, they used the altar for a lot of different things. They could have just been sacrificing an animal over, could have been a sexual abuse from the high priest onto her. You know, it was a hard thing to know for sure. Well, they ushered me up to the altar, and I could see that they had bound her feet. They had her feet spread apart, her legs, and they had bound them to the ends of the altar, and they had taken her arms, which were laying out this way, and roped them to the altar, which had little kind of like hooks, which they could bind the ropes around. And she was really white. Just I remember seeing her, and she was just real pale and real white. And I noticed that they had slit the bottoms of her feet and her wrists, and they were taking the blood that was running out of those areas and putting them into chalices and passing those cups around to different people who were partaking of her blood. Then the high priest, he took the athami, or the ritual knife, and he picked it up and he put my hand on it, and then he forced it into her chest. So when I think back on Halloween, you know, over that period of time that happened, you know, that was the climax event, Halloween night, where they killed that innocent little girl. And this is something that's happening every Halloween. That's not just an isolated event. I mean, there are children all over the world who are losing their lives during Halloween night, and yet we, as a society, we go out and celebrate it, and we go door to door and we ask for candy, and it's a big celebration to us. And I think it's quite ironic how one group of people are thinking it's fun, and another group of people are taking human life, and yet they don't, you know, there seems to be this wall and nobody wants to face the facts of what's really going on.